Hi guys, welcome back to Miss Muse. So basically this will be my part 2 of the JET program series, and it's going to be about the interview. If you got a letter around January and an email, congratulations, you've passed the first round of applications. In this video I'll be talking about what to wear for the interview, what they'll actually ask you about, maybe some situations that may pop up in your interview. First up, interviews. When you get ready for your interviews, it's always best to go a little bit early. So I would say maybe 15 to 10 minutes early before your interview starts. Be there. It's always better to be early than to be late for your interview, because they have their applicants back to back to each other, so they don't really have time to spare. Also, it's not a really good look if you are late to your interview. Second, clothing. It's formal wear, so best to wear a blazer or a suit if you have one. Boys don't wear black ties. In Japan, the only time they wear black ties is for funerals. If you do want to wear a black tie, make sure it has a pattern on it to actually break up the black. And for girls, just a blouse, a blazer, and skirt or pants. Make sure your skirt is not too short, and make sure you wear something that you feel comfortable in. Seriously, wear something that you feel comfortable in, but formal comfort wear. Okay, so for the actual interview part, you will be in a room with 3 other people. One, someone from the embassy, a past JET, and an academic lecturer or person of educational significance. They will each have a role, which I found was true. One will be an instigator, which asks all the questions and goes more in depth. One will be the judger. This one will tend to sit back and be quiet and tend to write a lot. They may speak a bit, but they're usually quite serious looking and they just keep writing. One will be the friendly one. They will keep smiling and be very welcoming to try and create a friendly environment. Your interview will be about 30 minutes long, and the difficulty on your interview is basically luck of the draw. I had a friend who had all the generic and super easy questions, and I unfortunately had the more harder, in-depth questions. It was basically because of my statement of purpose, but don't be afraid of writing on your statement of purpose. As long as you're comfortable in talking about the topic that you put on the statement of purpose, you'll be fine. Unfortunately, I wasn't too comfortable talking about this topic in my statement of purpose because it was still a bit fresh and raw about what happened to me. So these are some of the questions that they may ask you. Why are you interested in Japan? Name 5 famous New Zealanders and why they are famous. What can you bring to Japan from New Zealand? E.g. culture, habits, traditions, personality, basically anything that you can share with the kids and the community. They may ask for 3 or more answers. How are you around children? You're applying for the JET program, so I'm guessing you're good with children? What would you do if your Japanese teacher says something wrong in class? Also, another question that they asked me, what do you think you would most struggle with while in Japan? I told them that I would struggle with being away from people that I knew, being away from my friends for a long period of time. Actually, I said what I would struggle with is loneliness, because I have a tendency to always be surrounded by friends and family, and this will be different for me. But I also told them that I'm willing to take on the challenge and to actually grow in myself and meet new people and meet new friends. They also asked me, how would you make friends in Japan and integrate into Japanese society? Ooh, this one was a little bit hard for me because I didn't really know how to make new friends in Japan, especially if they couldn't speak English. So I said a really not great answer, and I actually told them that I would meet new people through HelloTalk, which is an app on your phone which lets you exchange language with people that you want to learn the language from. So I would basically find Japanese people who could speak a bit of English, and we could exchange language and cultures, and they would teach me and I'd teach them. But I don't think they knew what it was, and I think they may have thought it was a dating app. It's not a dating app. Also, the best answer would be for this question would be that you would participate in events, walk around and talk to the community, join clubs, maybe even find a club that you're really interested in. So if you're interested in sport, look around your area if there's any sports clubs that you could join, or even join in your school and participate in it. And they also ask the really important one, will you be open to being placed rurally, which means countryside? This question, I said I would be fine as long as there's some form of transport that I could go out and explore. And then they explained to me that there was a worst case scenario. There was one jet who was actually placed super rural, and the closest convenience store to him was basically like an hour bike ride away. And I basically said, as long as I have a bike, I think everything will be fine. As long as I have a way of moving around and traveling, I will be fine. I think they want to see how have you thought about being placed rurally and what would you do about it. If you think about it. Before you go to the interview, think about it, because you actually have a decent chance of being placed rurally, and you need to realize if you're willing to take on that challenge. Because some people think, oh, it's fine, it's going to be just in the countryside. But compared to New Zealand countryside, Japanese countryside is very rural, like small villages sometimes. Or even if placed on islands, which are really hard to access to the mainland. And sometimes there's barely anything to do or barely anything of convenience there. So I know a friend who's actually on an island in the Kyushu area, and they only have one vending machine on the whole island, and it gets refilled daily. It's a beautiful island though, seriously. If you love water, nature, and animals, it's the place to go. Also, another question they'll ask is, do you drive? And will you drive in Japan? Because this is a huge question they'll ask you. Actually, it's pretty important, because I found that if you do have your license and are willing to drive in Japan, which shouldn't be hard for New Zealanders because they drive on the same side of the road as we do, and their car seat is on the same side as us, so it's not that big of a transition. The only thing is, I'm gonna say this, but I'm not sure if it's true, but I find that if you do have your driver's license, you have a slight higher chance of being placed rurally, but you have a higher chance of being accepted into the JET program. This is just from what I'm thinking. I'm not actually sure about this, but this is what I'm gauging, because if you're in a rural area, to travel, you'd need a car to get to your schools, because the schools are actually quite far apart from each other, and you might be quite far from an actual city, so you'd need a car to drive around, because in some of those little towns and little villages, there's rarely any buses and there's no trains that go there. Also, I think they'll ask everyone this question. They'll ask you to tell them about yourself. This was so hard. I don't really like talking about myself. Well, that's a lie. Everyone likes talking about themselves, but when you're asked in a situation to talk about yourself and you're trying to think of all the good things and you're like, oh, it's gonna make it sound like I'm bragging. I basically said what my passions were, what I love doing, what I used to do. A main factor, I think, in the interviews, they want to see if you're able to adapt and that you're not too high strung. I think they want to find a bit more chill people who can just go with the flow and be okay with things not going their way. They'll also ask you a question about how will you deal with issues and misunderstandings with your Japanese English teacher or with other people in your office or area. This is another generic one. Why have you applied for the JET program? You should know this question. I said because the JET program offers a lot of things that I already love. Children, teaching, Japanese culture, Japanese language, and I was wanting to go on this program to be able to travel, learn more about Japan, and hopefully learn the language, and being able to share what I know about New Zealand with the kids. Also, they'll ask, what will you do after the JET program? Actually, I don't think I got this question. I think they do ask this to nearly everyone. It's about Wi-Fi. What would you do without Wi-Fi? It sounds like a stupid question, but it's actually really important because when you get to Japan and you arrive to your city, you won't have internet for possibly about a month, maybe 3 weeks if you're lucky, or 2 weeks. Because you would need your residence card, you would also need to set up your bank account, and it takes a while for the internet provider to actually send the stuff to you. And depending if your apartment or house has already got an internet fiber cable, they might have to send someone to actually install it for you. What I told them is I'd get a pocket Wi-Fi, which I highly recommend. Get a pocket Wi-Fi, and I had it for about 3 weeks or a month, and that was a perfect time. It is a bit more expensive, but it's helpful if you want to have Wi-Fi at home or at your schools until you've sorted out your SIM card to get data, and also until you've sorted out your internet. Oh, worst case scenario, you might not have internet for 2 months. That was a situation that happened to one of my friends up north, because the thing is, when we arrived, the residence cards machine actually broke. So we didn't get our residence card when we arrived in Japan. We actually got it about 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. She didn't get hers until about a week and a half later. Yeah. And then she finally got her internet 2 months later after she arrived in Japan, which was quite late. This one is a question I got asked in my interview. It was the last question, and they said, what would you do if you do not get into the JET program? I actually froze for a bit. I wasn't expecting this question. I was like, I'll apply again next year, which I think was the right answer, but I kept on talking and said, well, I really want to go to Japan either way and actually live and work there, so I maybe go over and get the working holiday visa and find a job, blah, blah, blah. Shh, don't keep talking. Just say that you'll apply again next year, and they'll just tell you, oh, okay, because usually second applicants have a higher chance of getting in. But again, it really depends if you're suited for the program. Alternate scenarios. So they may also ask you in the interview to do some tasks. I got asked to do a task. Actually, nearly everyone gets asked to do one task. They may put up a sentence. They may ask you, what is wrong with this sentence? It's like a grammar or spelling test. I got asked this one. Pretend we are students and teach us. Teach us what? They basically said anything. Or how would you make a class exciting in Japan? Yeah, I basically just said we're going to be making comic strips, made some jokes, got the kids involved, well, the panel. My friend also got an alternate version of this. They knew he could speak Chinese, and so they asked him, teach us how to write and speak the numbers in Chinese. Ooh, yeah. So being put on the spot is most likely what will happen. Just breathe, don't look too surprised, and be like, sure. They want to see if you're willing just to take it on, the challenge, even though they know that you'll be a bit surprised. Now we're going to jump back to your application. If you told them that you could speak Japanese, in your interview they will ask you Japanese questions. The level of difficulty of the question will depend on what you have put on your application, your level of Japanese. Also, they'll ask you to introduce yourself in Japanese. They'll ask you to do a jiko shiokai, which is introduction in Japanese. Good luck. So that's all I have for the interview process, but they will ask you different questions and more in different varieties. Maybe they reword it. Just be ready to answer anything. Take your time. Breathe. Think about it. It's not a shot like bang, 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 like that. You can take your time, relax. They want to see how you are under pressure. And if you freak out and just shout out whatever you want, they may not think you're ready to be in front of kids who may ask random questions, or if a teacher asks you to do a lesson last minute, you might not be ready for the JET program. This is Dewi. Thank you for watching my channel, Miss Muse, and subscribe down below if you haven't, and click the notification bell so any new videos. I also do reviews on tech stuff, and I also vlog. Let me know down below if there's anything you want to find out or know. Thank you. Bye.